Luke Humphries has taken home the first major of 2025. He's won the World Masters, takes £100,000 in prize money, and now that the Masters is a ranking event again, solidifies his place as world number one. So let's talk about it. So Humphries beats Jonny Clayton in the final. I did a bit of prediction in my preview video, didn't have Clayton going to the final, but as a Welshman, I'm very pleased to see Jonny with that display. He had a great performance against Luke Littler in particular. Littler was, as he tends to be, scoring heavily, but Clayton, his finishing set him apart, gets to the final, goes down 5-2, pulls it back not only to a deciding set, but a deciding leg. Really entertaining final. Luke Humphries looked imperious until he had a little wobble in the middle, which let Clayton come back, but it was a really entertaining final. Humphries does the job, and as I say, solidifies his place as world number one as we go towards the Premier League. Of course, he does have quite a bit of money to defend this year in the world rankings. If anyone's unfamiliar with the world rankings, it's prize money won over a 2-year period, and Humphries has, I believe, 3 titles to defend money at this year. He's got the Players' Championship, the Grand Slam, and then his World Championship at the end of the year. Oh, sorry, it's the Grand Prix, the Grand Slam, and the Players' Championship, and the World Championship. So that's what Humphries has to defend. Later this year, he's in good form. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go into the World Championship still as world number one. Wouldn't be surprised to see him win the World Championship again. But again, getting way ahead of myself here. So let's just have a look at this tournament. First round mostly went to plan for all the top seeds. The upset on day one was William O'Connor beating Rob Cross, and O'Connor just played really good darts. Cross never quite looked at the races. He will be kicking himself with some of the opportunities he missed after taking the first set, losing 3 straight. But O'Connor just recovered well after losing that first set, played some really good darts, some strong finishing. Damon Heta played really well on day one. Josh Rock played really well on day one. I was disappointed in Michael Smith. He lost 3-1 to Danny Noppert. I think he had a bit too much faith in Smith recapturing some of that form that obviously led him to the world title in 2023. But yeah, he had a difficult year last year, did Michael Smith, and doesn't seem to be coming out of that just yet. So that is a bit disappointing to see from one of the most exciting players in the sport. But look, Danny Noppert's really good, and I really enjoy watching him play when he's on. He played really well here, good finishing, and I feel like Michael Smith's just lost a bit of that confidence. He rode that wave of form after, he lost in 2 World Championship finals before winning the title, and once he took it home, he just looked unbeatable. The 9, obviously, against Van Gerwen, that if you know anything about darts, you've seen, both on a 9, I can't spake, etc., etc. But yeah, I do hope Michael Smith can find some of that confidence again. I was happy to see Gedwin Price, of course, 3-0 over Florian Hempel. We'll talk a bit more about him later as we go through. I've just got the results up in front of me, and I'm going through them and recalling what I can over 4 days of darts. Of course, the last couple of days will be much fresher in the mind. James Wade, Mike de Decker, a bit disappointed again in de Decker. I did predict that he would beat Wade, but James was on. Dave Chisnell beat by Cameron Menzies. That was, just a bad day at the office for Chizzy, really. Menzies played really well. Jonny Clayton, of course, I mentioned getting all the way to the final. He played really well against Schindler, which I thought was going to be his most difficult match, of course, until he played someone later on. Because Schindler's caused Clayton problems over the last few years, and so it was nice to see Jonny come through that, win it quite comfortably. Obviously, then in the second round, Ryan Searle gave him a real go and gave him a tougher test than Schindler or Littler, indeed, in the quarters. Aspinall was good against Gilding on day 2. Couldn't follow it up, obviously, later on in the tournament. Chris Dobie out in round 1. That was a bit disappointing to see. He's going to also be in the Premier League, and he'd have wanted to go into it on a better note than this. Littler, Van Gerwen, Van den Berg all breezed through. Van den Berg seeing off Gary Anderson. Anderson won the first set, then Dimitri reeled off 3 straight, didn't lose another leg. Into the Saturday in the second round, Noppert ousts O'Connor again. He played quite well, Danny Noppert, this weekend. I think I was a bit disappointed that he couldn't get past Luke Humphries, but I mean, it's Luke Humphries, world number 1, world champion last year. But yeah, played really well in the second round, took out William O'Connor without losing a set. Gerwyn Price beaten by Damon Heta. I did say in my preview video that Heta's given the Welsh players fits over the last few years, and it was to be again. Gezi just never quite looked like he was going to win, even though he won 2 straight sets to force the deciding set, had darts to win the match, still didn't quite look like he was ever actually going to take it, which is a shame because he played really well on day 1, and he did throw some good darts in the second round. But yeah, now he'll obviously also going into the Premier League, he'll be disappointed not to have a better showing of himself here. But again, Heta's in the top 10, he'll be gutted that he missed out on the Premier League, Damon Heta, and I think he'll be gutted that he didn't then go on and show a better account of himself against Luke Humphries. Not that Humphries gave Heta any chance really in the quarters. Stephen Bunting beats Peter Wright. Didn't mention Peter Wright on the first round, but he really, really battled to get through against Kevin Dirts. He never quite looked comfortable, but he had enough in the end to win it. Didn't have enough to get past Stephen Bunting. Bunting was strong again, good scoring, good finishing. Luke Humphries beat Josh Rock 4-0 in the last second round match of the afternoon session into the evening session. Clayton Searle, I mentioned earlier. Aspinall beat Menzies 4-1. Littler 4-0 over James Wade. Absolute demolition. Littler didn't lose a leg, and that's why I was so surprised to see Littler not be on with his finishing against Clayton or against Clayton in the quarterfinals, because he never gave Wade a sniff, and looked like he was not going to lose another leg for the rest of the tournament. But Littler he's one of those players that, like when Smith was at the top of his game, like when Van Gerwen's at the top of his game, he's one of those players where you don't think he's ever going to lose a leg. Same with Humphries. That's how good they are and how good they can be when they're playing at their best. Speaking of Van Gerwen, goes out in the second round to Dimitri Van den Berg. Dimmy hits a 9-darter on the way to this victory. Threatened a 9 earlier in the match, hit one later on. I'll try and have some footage of it playing here if ITV don't take the video down for that going on in the background. But yeah, really good performance from Van den Berg. He had to stay strong and hold off Van Gerwen, who came from 2 sets to 1 down, 3 sets to 2 up, and then Van den Berg had to force the deciding set and then win said deciding set, which he did. Hits the 9. Let's move on to the quarters then. Humphries beats Heta. I said Heta would be a bit disappointed in himself, as would Stephen Bunting against Danny Noppert, but Noppert had a really good tournament. Clayton beat Littler. I've talked about Van den Berg against Aspinall, and what I was saying about Aspinall earlier. He'll be disappointed that he wasn't able to show more of his talent and give himself a bit more of a momentum to go into the Premier League, to go out of the tournament on this note, 4-1 defeat. But still getting to the quarterfinals of the first major of the year, nothing to turn your nose up at. So now let's move on to the semi-finals. Both finished 5-2. Humphries beating Noppert, Clayton beating Van den Berg. I think Danny Noppert can be really pleased. I know I said earlier that he will be disappointed that he didn't give more of a fight to Humphries, but I mean, he won the opening 2 legs. He just then gave opening 2 sets, I should say. He just gave up 5 straight, which is why he'll be disappointed. But I mean, you get to the semi-finals, you lose to the world number 1 and the eventual winner. You can't really turn your nose up at that. So Dimitri Van den Berg, Jonny Clayton. Look, Dimitri had a really good tournament, but I think he'll be disappointed with his performance against Jonny Clayton. But to be fair, Jonny Clayton was just outstanding when it came to hitting his doubles, and he was for the whole tournament. I said in my prediction video that when Clayton has his confidence in his finishing, he's one of the best players in the world, and it was so here that he was taking out finishes at such a rate that it doesn't matter what your opponent does. And I think that was quite clear in the Littler match in the quarterfinals, because Littler averaged higher than Jonny, but Jonny just didn't give him a sniff. He just took over when it came to finishing, and that's what took him through, and that's what made the match against Van den Bergs look so one-sided, just with the 5-2 scoreline, because Dimitri was playing well, Jonny was finishing superbly, and so it was in the final when Clayton goes down. What was it? He goes 5-2 down, and he reels off 3 straight sets to force that deciding set, and it's because of his finishing. Now, his scoring can be a problem for him. He had a couple of counting errors as well, leaving himself bogey numbers and tricky finishes, but what Clayton does when he's at his best, hit a couple of 140s, work everything out later, and try and take out those finishes in ways that suit him, meaning double 16, double 8, and he likes breaking things down to go to the bull, and he doesn't mind switching to a trickier finish. He hit a double 19 in the final. He used 18s and 12s quite a bit, which he tends to put to the side in favour of 16 and 8. He used double 10 a few times after missing on tops. I think he hit a double 15 at some point in the tournament. I think he hit a double 15 finish. But it is Clayton's finishing that makes him so dangerous, and Humphries found that out. Luke Humphries was really poor when it came to finishing. What was getting Humphries was his ability to consistently score. That's what was getting him through, and that's what carried him to this title, is his ability to consistently score and outscore Jonny Clayton over the course of a best of 11 sets. This is why Luke Humphries is, and players like Humphries, like Van Gerwen, like Littler, these players who can score so consistently and so highly, it doesn't matter if your opponent's one of the best finishers on the tour if they can't get down to a finish before you. And that's why it's so important to have that combination of scoring and finishing consistently, to challenge consistently at the top of this tour for these major events. And that's what separated Luke Humphries from Jonny Clayton here. I think this tournament was a great example of why Luke Humphries is so good, and takes home the first major title of the year. Premier League is on this week, so I think I'm going to try and do videos after every night of the Premier League. If I miss one, I miss one. But this video has been long enough as it is. As I'm recording it, there are 24 minutes of audio. I'm sure this will be cut down into a much more manageable length. But that was the World Masters. Premier League's up next. Darts is in full swing.